So Lasfit just sent over the rock lights, and I'm going to get these installed on the Tundra today. So I got the set of 4 here and the harness and accessories. Each of the lights comes with these rubber backings and a metal enclosure. So I have already had a peek at this because I was planning on doing a few modifications. But here's our harness hardware. The harness comes with enough connections to set up 8 lights on there. We've got 4 today, so we're just going to be using the ones that aren't capped off, and we'll be keeping these caps on. It's got an inline fuse, 10 amp fuse, and then a 3-way rocker light. One's amber, one's white, and one's off. So I'm not going to be running this switch. I actually picked up an OEM style switch here that has a amber and a white button that can be activated individually. So I'm going to be using that. Additionally, I picked up some relays. I don't want to be sending 10 amps to this 3 amp rated button if there's a short somewhere, so we're going to be going through some relays. First step for me is to figure out where this button's going in the Tundra. So unfortunately, all of my OEM switch locations are occupied, but what I was thinking is that down here by the glass break sensor and the 2 outlets, a little aux cord, that I can Dremel out this little section here and pop the light in right there. Now, I was super hesitant to do that, but then I found out that this panel, this trim panel, is 68 bucks, so if I really mess it up, I can replace it. I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect the battery. Picked up some trim tools from Harbor Freight, and I'm gonna go ahead and gently pry on this gap right here and get this this panel freed up. Alright, got the trim panel on the workbench now, and I'm going to remove the buttons and the 2 charging ports here. There's 2 little ears that you have to squeeze on the side. There's our glass break sensor here. After fiddling with these a bit, I think I'm just going to leave them in. They're kind of a pain to get out. So if you look in these holes, you can see that they're keyed. And we're going to have to do something similar for our switch here because it's got to hold on to some tabs. It doesn't have the raised edges like the OEM switches do. So I 3D printed out this little adapter essentially. So we feed this through here. With a little bit of finagling. It sits in there like so. Now my plan is to glue this on the back side here. Once we cut it out and I can get better measurements, I'll 3D print out another one. I'll glue the backing in here, and the face should stick out like these buttons do a little bit. Just pop some tape on here so I can mark out where I want to cut. So after a lot of grinding and a lot of checking, our buttons now fit right in there, and we can recess them as we need to. So I can pull this tape off and we can clean up the edges a bit. Not my finest work around the edges, but honestly when it's down like this, you probably won't even see it. So I refined my button holding solution and printed it out in some black PLA. It's like a press fit in there, so I'll just add a little bit of glue so it doesn't come out. But if I was going to do it again, I wouldn't recess the button. But now that we've got our button set up, let's get the harness and the lights on the truck. So now that we got the switch all comfy cozy here, I need to send some signal wires to the relays, and that's going to come off of our red and blue wires here. So to get these to the relay, we're going to have to send them through the firewall somehow. So we can fish the wires through here under the steering wheel, and then there is a harness that comes through the firewall over there. We can send them through into the engine bay. There's a 10mm bolt right here in the corner. and then you just give it a good tug. And now we have all this access here. So I've got a decent amount of wire on the ground over there that we're going to run into the engine bay, and then I've got this tidied up, a couple zip ties, kept it out of the way of anything. So we can put this panel back on and get these into the engine bay. This is probably going to be pretty difficult to see, but if you look way up there, see that bundle of wires? Right underneath it, there's going to be a little nipple, and that's going to go out into the engine bay. Let me show you that from the opposite side. So that harness comes into the engine bay right next to the master cylinder, and below that bundle that leads into the harness is a tiny little nipple, and I really can't even get a shot of it. I can't even get my hands in there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pick, tape the wires to it, and then poke it through the bottom of that. Probably borderline impossible to see, but there's our pick right there. Alright, so we got our wires pulled through here, and I'm going to leave about this much on there, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our relay block, and that's actually going to live on this post back here that you totally can't see. But it fits right on this unused post, chilling there. So I don't need a ton of wire, but I want to leave enough so that I can pull the relay pack out and, you know, service it if I need to. So we got the relay block here. This is just going to be power. These are going to be our signals, and these are going to go to the lights. So we're going to plug in our 2 signal lines. So now let's get the Lasfit harness and start running that through. So we're going to have to find a nice middle of the road location for all of our light connections. I'm going to drop this harness down next to the brake master cylinder right now, and we will find a good location under the truck for these. So I think this is going to be a pretty clean route. We'll have the positive here, the negative on the body ground here, and it runs around the fuse box, back past the distribution block, and then up and over the brake master down to the lights. And then this just has to run right here to our relay block. So super easy, super clean. We are also no longer going to need this switch. Up here at the relay block, we've got, I terminated these in bolt connectors, and so the black is power, and then we've got blue. So blue is white, which is the yellow. Could I have made that more confusing? Probably. Alright, so that's our relay setup. I will tape all that up and make it look pretty, but we're just testing right now. So Lasfit provides hardware and instructions to actually go through your fender liner. I went and I picked up these 30-pound magnets. They have a little N4 like nutsert in there. So the hardware that comes with these lights actually goes right in there. You just have to shorten them up a little bit, and then you have something like this, where you can just place it wherever you want, and it'll stick like crazy. Here, let me get a piece of metal. I think this will hold just fine. So this is one of the rears. Let's get this in position and see what kind of routing we need to do with the harness. All right, so I got one light here. I think the route I'm going to take is to run it up the frame rail here, and then up with this harness up here, around the frame rail there, come down, and probably meet in the cross member and have everything live right above the cross member. In the truck, I just have my switch sitting here, and I just set up a really janky ground for right now. And let's hit amber and go see how that looks. Yep, that's amber. So everything's working. I'm gonna get the rest of it wired up. It's gonna be a little hard to see, but I pretty much followed the frame rail and the brake line all the way up. So the master cylinder is up there, and I came down along and routed on the brake lines and then onto the cross member, and then I have everything zip tied to the cross member. There's holes similar to these on the top, so you can run a zip tie through them and just clamp all your wires down. I could still use a few more. We got some wires poking up, but they're all out of the way. Because I wasn't sure where I wanted to put the lights back here, I left the majority of the harness at each of the lights so I can cut that zip tie and then just move it around wherever I want. Alright, so I've got everything hooked up here. We've got our positive attached. Runs behind the battery there. Our negative right here to the ground. And it runs along here to our relay block back there that looks fairly factory on that stud. And then I have everything kind of Tessa wrapped and tucked in back here. Tessa being the tape that's not the gross electrical tape. So unfortunately our switch situation is a little dire here. I can get the relays to trigger just fine, but the switch is looking for a positive 12 volts coming through the green and a ground on the black. The illumination comes from the yellow. I have to actually ground the power and the yellow to actually get them to light up. And I think that's because of the way that I wired my relays. There is another issue with the switch though, and that's because I failed to notice this little plastic piece back here. And where that lands is exactly where the switch goes. Okay, so I reprinted the button mount and now it sits flush within the trim. You can hardly see the 3D print, especially when the buttons are depressed. Yeah. So that moves it far enough forward that the button actually fits now. We got a nice solid button mounted here, and let's go check out these lights. So I'm not a huge avid off-roader. The truck is actually only two-wheel drive anyway, so I'm not going to take it on anything gnarly. But I must say that these lights are super bright, and they help me see a whole bunch of stuff that I wouldn't have normally seen. And when I'm out in the desert unloading bikes, it'll be nice to have a little bit of extra light all around the truck. I want to send a massive thank you to Lasfit for sending out these rock lights, and thank you for hanging out with me in the garage. I'll see you on the next one.